key to the development of this program and key to the development of the growth of the mentors and what you each bring to the group, because you all have such an incredible wealth of background experiences. That's one of the things that excites us the most. I mean, where else are we going to get people who have such a cross section, not only in teaching, but in experience with boards, experience with ministries, experience with all of the various initiatives that have gone on in the last few years. So you have that really nice combination of social, cultural, political diversity that you can bring together. And we find that the more that this group collaborates and supports one another, the more our students get from their experience, because you're feeding each other and that in turn feeds the students. So I'm really excited that you're here for at least part of this day. And that you're going to be working together and having an opportunity to talk with one another and see what this year unfolds to look like. I'm really hopeful that it's going to be better one way or another. I mean, obviously COVID's not gone, but we are experienced COVID navigators as well. And it's going to be an interesting year with the politics and the negotiations that are going to take place. But, you know, that's another place. We've seen this. We've been there, done that. And we play a huge role in helping the students just stay calm, but also to learn that part of the profession. That's a reality that we all have learned to work within. So I cannot thank you enough. I know we pay you so much that we've attracted the masses, but I cannot thank you enough for the time, the knowledge, the experience, and the caring and commitment that you bring to our students. So I hope you have a great day. I know you will. Mary's, you're in great hands. And I'll turn it back to you, and I'll go back to reviewing course outlines.
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to echo Kathy's sentiment. You do this for a labor of love. We acknowledge that. And we know that you return because you love it. So thank you. There are people in this room, as Kathy mentioned, who've been here for the 4 years of the program since its inception, and we're so grateful and blessed for that. And we always welcome new mentors in. So the key takeaway from today is just to see one another and start building that community. There are people here who I've only met virtually who I feel like I know. So we did it for the last 2 years, but this is fantastic. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us online. All of the online stuff that I've done over the past 2 years, I haven't done a hybrid thing. So appreciate the tech department for supporting us in that and recording it for those who couldn't be here and will be watching it later. And I just want to give a huge shout out and introduction to Erin Peterson, who's the program coordinator for the BEd program writ large, and a key support in coordinating and scheduling the mentor groups, and she was involved in interviewing new mentors with me. So Erin is a key player, and if you have any issues regarding scheduling or contacting your groups, Erin is your go-to person, and she's going to come back at the end and give us a few program updates. Okay, so I'm going to share the agenda in a minute, but first, why isn't this? This was working a second ago. There we go. Okay, first the land acknowledgement. So Western has 3 official land acknowledgements. I'd encourage you at your first group meeting to share the land acknowledgement for your board or for the land that you are working in and on. I'm not going to read all of it. I am going to acknowledge that we're on the traditional lands and modern territories of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenapehouk, and Chunongtong nations. And I want to highlight, because we really want to make this about more than words, but a meaningful reflection of our positionality and our responsibilities. So I acknowledge personally my role as a public educator toward revealing and correcting miseducation and renewing respectful relationships with the Indigenous communities that I am associated with. I invite all of you to do the same, take a moment of gratitude for the land that we're on and acknowledge the caretakers of this land and your role as a public educator. What I want to specifically and collectively do is invite us all to think about how assessment is entangled with colonization, is really the key driver of colonization. And so we're not just one exit ticket away from decolonization, indigenization, culturally relevant pedagogy, equity, diversity, and inclusion if we don't transform how we think about assessment and how we consider how it's entangled with curriculum and pedagogy. It's really about what we value. And so that is the key value principle driving the redesign of this course. This is not your typical research and assessment course. You all know that because you've agreed to be part of this mentorship program. And so, sorry, I'm struggling a little bit with why this isn't advancing. Erin, would you mind getting Renee? Okay. All right, so it's really a community. This picture was taken with our very first graduating group in the program. The numbers are from last year. Last year, we had 46 mentors working with over 732 teacher candidates across 16 sessions in a 2-year journey. So it is a journey. I want you to kind of really think about that metaphor, and it's a journey in a community. Today, we're going to begin with welcoming each other, reviewing the expectations of the course, the structure and purpose of the program. And for those of you who've been through this spiel, you know that we're really committed to going deeper. So you'll hear some things on repeat, but each time I want to take it deeper into a new level. And so I invite you to explore that with me, what it means to foster an inquiry stance in the profession. We're going to share the draft course outlines. They're not going to change. It's just, you've got the paper ones and the resources for year 1 and 2 and program updates. And then we're going to have lunch. If you can stay for that, we've got a delicious lunch provided by Bearcat coming in at noon. So welcome. I would like us all to just begin with a quick 3-word introduction. Your name, the most recent board that you've been associated with, your pronouns if you'd like to share them, and the subject. We're all teachers, so the subject that you loved to teach. Okay, so I think I'll just pass the microphone around, and Jenny, can I start with you? Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jenny. I use the pronouns they, them, and their. I work with the Thames Valley District School Board, specifically within the SWAC FNMI program. I also teach here in a course called LGBTQ+ Issues in Education. And I think that I love working with youth. That's the subject that I like to teach the most, is just helping facilitate that sort of self-discovery path, because SWAC, I get to teach everything.
Hi, I'm Bill McEwen. I've taught within Thames Valley since 2005. I presently teach just up the hill at Banting, and I teach whatever is needed to help kids succeed. I've been teaching history for about 10 years, but I go where I'm needed and help where I can.
Hi, I'm Renee Kermza. I'm recently retired. I just retired in June. I've taught for the Thames Valley Board and previous to that Middlesex County for 36 years. My favorite subject to teach, I guess, would be history. I really enjoyed teaching that, but the most rewarding part of the job for me was just working with the kids daily in the classroom. So.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Armstrong with the Thames Valley District School Board, retired, but I never really retired. I'm back filling in. My favorite subjects to teach are math and language arts, and I have the great pleasure of teaching the language arts course here at Altus.
Hello, everyone. Cindy Mallory, retired administrator with Thames Valley District School Board. As a teacher, my favorite subject was history. As an administrator, my favorite subject was building community and just helping to create a loving space where everybody was included.
Penny Gordon. I taught in Thames Valley and Oxford County before that. I retired in 2014 and have been teaching here since. I teach primary junior math and language arts and math, another common one that we all love to teach because I think it gives us a chance to really get to know our kids.
Hi, everyone. My name's Diane. I'm retired and I've been retired for about 6 years. I actually do some marking here, and that's how I became interested in this because I'm interested in the equity and diverse education. And my favorite area was special education when I worked for Thames Valley District School Board.
Hi, my name's Sandy DeRoche. I see some familiar faces, so that's always nice. I teach grades 7 and 8 at Byron Somerset Public School. I've been with the intermediate division for a number of years, first in the East End over at Sir Winston Churchill for about 10 years, and then now in the far west at Byron. So I'm just looking for different leadership opportunities. I've been part of the, I've had student teachers, and I've been working with Althouse for a number of years. So I'm just looking for a different avenue of leadership. So thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Smith. As you can see by my North Middlesex swag, I'm principal at North Middlesex District High School in Park Hill. I was just out there this morning for the first day of high school. Here I come, meeting our incoming class. It was so amazing to see them. And that's sort of, okay, yep, that it's on, game on. I used to teach history, so that was my passion as an administrator. I think working with the relationships in the community is just the most important thing that we're dealing with, and looking forward to another year of being a master teacher mentor.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Bruins, and with TVDSB, I'm the principal up at Sir Arthur Currie in the northwest corner of London. This is my 4th year in the mentoring program, and really excited to be back. And a passion, I think I have a passion for inspiring others and really literacy on a global lens. Glad to be back.
Thank you. I'm Debbie Shore-Reed. I am retired from Thames Valley District School Board. I'm currently with LDA, and I guess my passion, Scott, is math. Although I do like literacy as well. This is also my 4th year doing the Master Teacher Mentor.
Hi, I'm Deb Austin, and I retired June 2019 from Thames Valley, teaching French and phys ed. And I am still, I guess I'm on the supply list for Thames Valley, and I have moved up north, and I'm on the Simcoe supply list as well. So I've been helping out there, as I feel as the supply teachers these days. We certainly are helping out where they need. And by far my favorite subject to teach is phys ed, the development of lifelong learning in all venues of life.
Hi, my name's Barb Nafu. It's nice to see Deb again. Our sons went to school 9 years ago, so it's nice to see her again. I'm a retired principal from the London District Catholic School Board. I retired in 2021, and I just love teaching and learning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Praveen Skinner. I'm currently with the Thames Valley District School Board, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm passionate about equity and have always loved to teach literacy. And one of my most memorable years of teaching was working with newcomers as an ESL teacher.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Bayshard. I was hired by Thames Valley District School Board in 2009. I am an English teacher. I call it more like critical thinking and literacy. That's my super passion. This is my 1st year being a mentor here, and I'm hoping actually to jump into the administration pool perhaps in the fall.
Hi, everybody. I'm Fatima Lial, and I go by she and her and hers. My passion would be literacy, French, and tech and art, of course. I love all those. And I would say that I work for TVDSB, and I am in the teacher librarian role and guidance and French and prep. And I love just to work with kids and all the divisions from the kindergarten up to grade 8 and see their love of learning.
Hi, Vicky Kotarba. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I currently teach grades 7, 8 at Northridge. I've taught everything from grades 1 to 8. Grade 8 is definitely my favorite. And my current favorite teaching areas are math and science, but it changes often.
I'm Joanne Lombardi. Some of you may recognize my name. I am the practicum coordinator here at the faculty. I was with London Catholic for 20 years. I moved on to Huron-Perth and retired from there as a principal. But like many of you retirees, we never do retire, do we? It's in our blood. I loved teaching literacy, but I think really as an administrator, spec ed pulled my heartstrings and teacher development. So practicum kind of works for me and being a mentor too.
Thanks, Joanne. My name is Linda Thomas, retired principal, most recently St. Thomas Aquinas, Catholic Central, and London District, of course, and graduate of Old House. And like all of our retirees, I think, you feel like you want to retire, but then you're pulled. And so I'm here. This is my lovely sister, Barb, and I watched her do this program for the last couple of years, kind of dipped my toe in, and I said, okay, I have to come back. So thank you to everyone for inviting me here, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Nice to see you, Praveen.
Hello, my name is Eva Marcinowski. I taught very, very far away from here. I taught in the Chilliwack School District in British Columbia for about 20 years. I recently returned because all of my family lives here in London. So I am working as a sub in the Thames Valley School District. And so it's really nice to be able to see the differences in the different areas. And I mean, I grew up in London, so I experienced this district as a student. So it's interesting to come back and experience it as a teacher. My, excuse me, my subjects of interest are science and math. I never thought I would ever say that. I always thought it would be language based. So it's interesting where teaching leads you.
Hello, I'm Lisa Williams, Thames Valley, and my favorite subject would have been literacy, and specifically early literacy, and developing those foundational skills that children need to move on and be those confident readers to be successful in life.
Good morning. My name is Paul Cook. I'm the Executive Director of the Learning Disabilities Association in London, not-for-profit association. I also work within the teacher education program here, and my favorite time is with the first-year Ed Site cohort students. That's okay.
Behind you. I'm Claire Tattersall. I'm the new manager in the Faculty of Education Teacher Education Office. So yay, I get to work with all these lovely people and all of you lovely people. My favorite thing, I've worked at Western for 20 years, and my favorite thing to do is working with at-risk students who've lost faith in themselves and don't believe they're fantastic anymore, and helping through positive psychology and well-being to help them realize how amazing they really are. So that's sort of my greatest passion. And it's nice to see all of you. I might duck away because I still have to hire instructors for a week and a half from now. No big deal. It's totally fine. Everything's under control.
Hi, I'm Kelly Zuber, retired from Thames Valley secondary level. My favorite thing to teach would be chemistry, I guess, and identify as he, him, his.
I'm Greg Bresnick. Nice to see old friends from Thames Valley when I was part of that group, and then finished off my career with the Waterloo Region District School Board. And my retirement gig over the past few years has been working with medical education over at the Schulich School of Medicine. And this is my 4th year going into the mentoring program. That's why we keep coming back, because we enjoy it. And my favorite subject to be involved in has been music. And actually, a few years ago, I was an instructor here at Althouse doing that. So a very rewarding opportunity.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nick Corrales, retired administrator with the Thames Valley. At present, I'm doing some work with Fanshawe College. I've done work with kindergarten up to university. I spent a lot of time teaching EdFo courses for many of you, and enjoyed it, and I'm glad I'm here. Thank you to Paul for introducing me to the process. So glad to be here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Panay, retired from Thames Valley. I can't believe it's my 4th year being off this September, but it's so nice to see everyone in person. And my favorite subject to teach, which I haven't done since 1999, is math, and I still enjoy doing that with many people.
Thank you, everyone. As you can see, some of our new mentors have been personally invited by some of our returning mentors. So just welcoming each other into the community, I appreciate that. Okay, myself, I was a learning support teacher for the bulk of my career with Thames Valley. That's where I ended my career in K-12 and moved into higher ed. I don't think of it as higher. Actually, go back to my elementary roots and I think, oh, like I love elementary pedagogy and really the relational deep knowing of your students. My favorite subject to teach and support, because I was a learning support teacher, was literacy. And so the bulk of my career was supporting early elementary literacies. I'm going to talk a little bit later about where my interest in assessment stems from. And we're going to do that through an activity with you now. So those of you online, I know you've been introducing each other through the chat, and Erin is going to facilitate. Nope, she's not. Okay. We might do breakout groups online, but for now, with us, I want you to think about going on a journey and whether you're a person who likes to wing it or plan it. Of course, it's important to keep the end goal in mind, the destination where we're headed, but are you more of a, I'm flying by the seat of my pants because I really enjoy the journey and the exploration and some freedom and spontaneity? Or are you the person that needs to map out everything sequentially and you get a little bit anxious if you don't know what's going on? In my family, we're very polarized in terms of my partner and my children on that spectrum, but I realize it's a continuum. I think it's really important. I like to do this exercise at the beginning of new learning, especially as mentors, to help us understand where we situate ourselves on that continuum and understand that our students and mentees are going to be at other points on the continuum and begin to be able to center ourselves in terms of the amount of structure and direction and support and the kinds of feedback that we will receive well. Okay, so for those of you in the room, I'm going to ask you to stand up, and if you're wing it, I want you to, let's like line up along this window here, and that way you'll be able to see the next screen as well. So wing it, you're at the far end of the room, and ultra planners, you're like up here by me. I will be like spiritually at the very farthest end of the room. I can tell you that right now, but I invite you to kind of sort yourself along that line against this wall of windows here. Okay, so wing it, plan it. They can share that in the chat, and then in the breakout room, the next slide, we're gonna pick a quote and they can talk about.
Okay, so we don't need the breakout rooms this second?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So if you like to plan things a lot, go to this end. If you like to more wing it, go to that end of the line. Okay. Andrew, I'm going to call out on you because I know you just came back from like, what was it, a 3-week? 3 weeks in the Yukon, and you were winging it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're going to fold the line in a minute, folks. So if you could just spread yourselves out so that you can kind of get into a line.
It's okay, I'm an ultra planner, so this is good. Mary and I will just talk.
Oh, I wanted to advance
the next slide.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we still want to do that.
So when we get the next slide advanced, here we go. I want you to read those quotes to yourself. And I want you to pick the one that resonates right now for you.
And when we fold the line, you're going to get a chance to talk to somebody face to face and explain why that quote resonates for you. I think we're going to have to move the. Obviously, they're all good. I picked them. Okay, have you all had a chance to read all four? Okay, please fold the line. So that means Eva, you're going to be talking with Scott. More or less, you're just going to find one other person to talk to. If you could try to I realize it's a little bit crowded, but try to so the people at this end of the line, the tail, you kind of walk back up and you arrange yourselves more or less across from a person. Okay, so Paul, Eva, yeah, come up this way. So we're gonna have a meetup with the wingers and the planners.
So you can just say in the mic what you want breakout room people to do, and they'll.
Okay, so people in the breakout rooms, I just want you to talk amongst yourselves about which quote resonates for you the most and why. Okay. So this program really isn't about me, and you're not going to hear much more about me. And I haven't even shared anything about myself in previous mentor meetings, to be honest with you. So I'm like, I don't want to center myself, but I do want to talk about why these quotes matter to me, because it matters to the design of the program. So I get the prerogative, I chose them, so I get to like all of them. And I think they resonate all at different times in different ways, right? For me, number 4 was where I began in my career as a learning support teacher in the special ed paradigm, starting to really question the dominant standardized assessment practices in special education and in EQAO. When I thought about my students' multi-literacies and I didn't see that recognized or valued, I started to think about different ways of seeing, and I moved into graduate studies to explore that in my master's and doctoral work. So it was kind of at the intersection of multi-literacies and formative assessment pedagogies. Part of my movement into that domain was, in 2010, we started getting a lot of PD around growing success. And around the same time, within give or take a couple of years, we had the new kindergarten program, and I was learning about pedagogical documentation and was like, how can we bring this into everything that we're doing? So that was sort of my starting point. So number 2, number 3 became important to me at that point. And then the more that I got involved in learning about research and how to do it, the more I realized that number 1 is really where we have to start. Because what does it mean to know is vital to so many things when it comes to improving student learning and supporting student learning. It matters in terms of course, understanding success criteria and being able to communicate that and help students to internalize it. But it also matters in terms of challenging what it means to know, and are there other ways of knowing? It matters in terms of designing the right kinds of learning experiences that will support the kind of learning and doing and being that we want to see happening in classrooms. It matters in terms of the questions that we're asking, and assessment is all about questions and asking the right ones. That's validity. So when teacher candidates say, I don't think that I know enough about assessment, I point them, and I want you to point them to that, it's curriculum and pedagogy matters. Asking the right questions matters. Assessment, assignments, learning experiences, all of that flows from you having a deep understanding of what you're teaching. That's why I asked you to begin. There's always a method to my madness. What do you love to teach? because that's what you're most passionate about. And that expresses a lot of your values and ways of knowing. And I think it's important to start thinking about that really deeply. Okay, so those kinds of thinkings were what fed into the redesign of this course. The course outline remains the same. Teacher candidates learn to gather information about their own students to serve in planning and assessment. They learn to use the iterative process of inquiry and database decision-making to facilitate student learning and to use research and reflecting on their own practice. What we did in redesigning it in the mentor program was to really shift to that. It has to become a habit or an inquiry stance. How do we take an inquiry stance? All of those quotes that we just talked about, they all have something to do with inquiry and critical thinking, asking questions, going deeper, challenging perceptions and assumptions. And so those are habits of mind. So that is what we're working on through this program. So the next thing I just want you to talk at your tables for a minute or two is just to surface what you think an inquiry stance towards teaching looks like, sounds like, is like in your practice, an inquiry stance towards teaching. Okay, so I'll give you 2 minutes. Go. Okay, I hate to cut the conversation short, but I wanted to let that thought percolate. And I want to share with you now the stance towards inquiry that we take in the mentor program. Oops. Can I go back? Oh dear. Yes. Okay. Cochrane, Smith, and Little wrote a book on practitioner inquiry, and then in later work, they developed further this notion of an inquiry stance. So first of all, inquiry as stance redefines leaders as learners. I want you all to take off your leadership cap in your mentor group and be a co-learner. And that a core part of the knowledge and expertise necessary for transforming practice and enhancing students' learning resides in the questions, theories, and strategies generated collectively by practitioners themselves. So I heard in the table talk, examples of inquiry-based learning in classrooms. I heard words like curiosity, big ideas, big questions, the dynamic of it all. And that's really important. I'm glad that you surfaced that in terms of thinking about how you might facilitate this in your groups. But I think the number one thing that I want to center is that you're all learners in the group, that you're engaging in this collective practice. And there's something of generative about making things visible together that is really generative for transformative thinking. Okay. So the other thing about the mentor program that's key to know is that we're helping to facilitate this transition from student to teacher and teacher to learner. And of course, that means crossing 2 thresholds. It takes most of the first year to get over the first one. And then we're finding that the second year is really helpful to get to the second place. If I think there's one great thing about that second year, I think we can really leverage that. But of course, that's not what it's looked difficult and rocky enough there. Of course, it's murky when you don't know what you don't know. And that's why we need mentors. And so there's 3 key ways that I have found that mentors can support these transitions and support teacher candidates. First is to keep the learning curve in mind, and you will find returning mentors, you know this well, new mentors, you will also be part of this learning curve. And just acknowledge that you're learning, it's all new to you as well. But returning mentors can tell you that teacher candidates first year, after about week 2, go down to there. It's a very fast up and down, and then it's quite a long down. And it can feel as a mentor like, oh, like everything, like you're kind of in it with them. You're like, oh my gosh, like this is terrible. So a couple of things. Number one, I share this with the teacher candidates too, is to know that you will resurface, that there, you know, that is part of the journey. But if you find mentees who are really struggling, who aren't resurfacing, then please let us know. So you're really key first responders. It's not your job to solve the problems that they're experiencing, but you can let us know. You can let Claire know, Erin know, myself know, so that we can direct them, Joanne know. Anyone in the teacher ed office is skilled at meeting students one-on-one, meeting them where they're at, and accommodating, differentiating. We've got all the tools at our disposal, but we need to know. So please let us know. Okay. The Dunning-Kruger effect is when you're unskilled and unaware of it. That's like the learning curve right there, right? So it's just that expertise, that what we know about the development of expertise. It takes time. You got to kind of go down to figure it out. And at the beginning, you don't even know the right questions to be asking. And so when we're talking about how do we ask ourselves and answer better questions, mentors can really help with that. How do we pose important questions, rich questions, questions that lead to more inquiry, questions that challenge assumptions. And really, as one mentor said, you know, how your role at this point is going from glow to grow, and especially in year 2, especially after practicum, they're kind of glowing. Okay, how can we gently move you from glow to grow? And the third thing you can do is, because you know them so well, you get to know them well, especially over the 2-year journey, you can help to answer these questions. Like, this is a teacher candidate who said, I struggled with feedback, to be honest. So I asked my mentor, and she gave me some guidelines on knowing what I'm seeking and how to be intentional about asking for it. So you're well positioned to be able to have those conversations. In terms of how the learning is organized in the course, it's structured around the OCT standards of practice. And I encourage you to think about them as big ideas and essential questions. So we can turn teachers demonstrate commitment to the well-being and development of all students into, how might I, in this particular context, demonstrate commitment and well-being to the development of my students? And then it becomes something that they're continuously learning more about. So we don't want to see the competencies and the standards as checklists. We want to see them as opportunities for discovering, what does it really mean to be competent in this area? So the course is structured as participation in a caring and collaborative professional learning community, documenting practice through developing habits of collection and reflection on practice. So we call this thing a PPR, professional practice record, but it's not a thing. We've gotten away from, you know, keeping it in a specific place or having it look a certain way. And it's not your job as a mentor to be checking in on it. What we have found is that teacher candidates, again, because of that learning curve, they start to collect everything and they don't really know why it's meaningful. They just think this seems important. And then we bring them back through the group to sharing examples of documentation. I'm going to give you some quotes from mentors about how they do this in a bit, but it's really get them away from thinking of things as a product and onto process. We're not interested in your products. We're interested in supporting your process. We're developing habits of mind and an inquiry stance. Okay. And then integrating that into a professional learning plan is both intended to help them to consolidate and be intentional about their learning from their learning, and being intentional about their next steps. Also to scaffold them into, you know, the expectations of the profession. Okay, I will do another session in January on ALP presentations. So just know for now, if it's new to you, that they're modeled after annual learning plans in the profession. In terms of meeting course expectations, I think all of you know by now that this program is pass-fail. So how do you pass this course? Consistent attendance is crucial because the learning is happening collectively. So it's not something that they can phone in later or submit something. They have to be present and engaged. And so we say if they're missing more than 2 meetings a year, that's going to be a risk for the progression in the program. Over the 4 years, we've had 1 student out of hundreds of teacher candidates who needed to repeat a year because they just were not attending consistently. You need to flag that for me though, or for Erin, and let us know. So if you've got candidates who are missing 2 consecutively, or kind of a habit of, you know, here 1 week, gone the next, here another one, like if there's some inconsistency to that, please flag that for us. It's also usually a signal that they're struggling with their well-being as well, and with just coping in general in the program. And so we need to know early. Okay. Collegial participation, sharing examples of documentation in group meetings, developing and presenting their ALP at the end of year 1 and 2, seeing it as a work in process. We really like to see, you know, reflection on the previous ALP and, you know, updating that for the next year. Okay, and then there's this external review that happens where they present it to an invited guest, who is usually another principal or supervisory officer, in some cases another mentor, to give us that fresh set of eyes in the group, that experience of some professional networking. And my goals for this have always been that they can begin to connect their personal learning goals to school growth plans by hearing from somebody who's in, you know, ideally position to be in that position of developing school growth plans, to see how they relate. It's really important that verbally articulating goals supports next steps. And we want to shift the mindset away from evaluation. So they're not being evaluated, and the external reviewer has no ability to evaluate the quality of the plan because they haven't been there to see the development of it. You're in the position to do that. You've been supporting the learning. It's not a question of them passing or not, they're doing it. But we're getting to that place of justification that they're able to justify why this, why now, and receive some commentary, some feedback on possible supports, networks they can connect to, that sort of thing. Okay, so we have been researching our practice, developing a community of practice with the mentors and within the mentor groups. And so my inquiry has been, how is space made for teacher inquiry within the mentor groups? We did interviews, we've done focus groups. My favorite part of it is doing pedagogical documentation with mentors in their groups. And so what I'm going to share with you now are, okay, well, so first of all, here's a quote. First of all, just keep in mind that they're doing something that's unschool. And you need to keep that in mind too, and take off your teacher hat, put on your learning hat, and realize that there's over 40 of you and there's over 700 of them. There's going to be difference. There's going to be variation. Think about, like, you know, 3 grade 5 teachers in a big school, and how, I mean, my doctoral research centered on this. So that's my example. They were teaching the same curriculum. They all did it differently, right? There's natural variation is all right. There's space for your professional judgment. There's space for responding to the needs of your group. There's space for group dynamic. Everything comes out at the end the same. They'll talk amongst themselves and be like, well, I'm not doing that in my group, but they're all presenting an annual learning plan at the end of the year, and they all kind of have the same format. So you are all centered on the structure of the program. So that's okay. But within that space, there's different kinds of inquiries that can emerge. So I want to share 3 different mentors' experiences. One mentor really focused with her group on what is worth documenting and how do you know. And so she would take note of themes and gaps in the group discussion. And then the next meeting, based on that, she's like, okay, bring in an example of your work, student work, and some associate teacher feedback. I'm going to share a quote from each of these in a second. Another mentor really focused on what does it mean to be competent in a particular OCT competency. So she had breakout groups where they shared work samples from Practicum 1 and talked about how it reflected an OCT competency. And she had them video record their breakout group discussion. And then she took time later to review those videos, make notes on it, and plan the next meeting based on that. How do you learn from your documentation, and who are you now? This is something that a mentor did with her group in their second year. So, and this is such a great idea that I've incorporated it into the course outline. So do a self audit of all of your stuff, that you know, virtual, whatever it is, PPR, all of your documentation that you've gathered, and start looking at what do I have like the most of? What competence or competencies is it reflecting? Where are some gaps potentially? And then share that in terms of developing your annual learning plans. Okay, so the mentor who asked what is documentation said, I realize that documentation, feedback, and reflection is intertwined, and I see them getting confused here, especially in year one. So when we say documentation, it can be work samples, it can be feedback, it can be reflection, but what does it mean to reflect? So I would have them start creating a giant mind map, sticky notes, do a whole wall, and begin like making visible, how do we, you know, what is it and how do we learn from it? What does it mean to be competent? That mentor told me every time I listen to their sessions, I print off the competencies and make notes about what I'm seeing, because they're having a hard time seeing it because they're in that learning curve place where they don't know what they don't know. So I start making it visible to them. And then in the breakout group, she said, I noticed the dialogue and where they helped each other to see things they wouldn't normally have seen without those collective conversations. For example, 2 TCs were at opposite ends of the teaching spectrum in terms of ECE and grade 12. And so because Taylor had a lens of teaching society, challenge, and change, she noticed things in Nicole's kindergarten students and Nicole's, you know, she noticed a social emotional piece as being a possible next step. So she said, there's that kind of fruitful generative thinking that comes from sharing these things together. And how do you learn from documentation? Here's where we learned about the transition from year one to 2. So this mentor said they found a lot of them that first they did lots of lesson plans, had a ton of those. First year, they were really concerned with themselves. It was all about them, showing that they knew how to do that. And then year 2, they were like, okay, we got a lot of those. It's time for me to look outside myself. Okay. Okay, so lunch is about to be served. I'm going to give you a chance to look at the draft outlines that are on the tables for the course outline. And I'm also going to put up on screen the course outline for year 1, which is sitting in the OWL course site. But as you're eating lunch, I'd like you to review with your table group just informally, ask each other questions, because I think at each table we've got a mix of experienced and new mentors. Share strategies that you found that worked well in the past. And this Jamboard link is based on it's from the mentor debrief meeting that we had last year. So there's lots of great examples of strategies that worked well there. There are a couple of things that I want to center about that though. One of the things that I noticed that came out of this as feedback for me is really the need to really focus in on growing success. This is, after all, a course about assessment. Even though we're working on an inquiry stance, we have to be drawing their attention to what do those principles mean and how do they get enacted in practice. And so last year and going forward, we've made chapter 4 required reading for year 1 and chapter 5 required reading for year 2. But I want us all to commit as mentors to the first inquiry for 22-23, which is centering principles of assessment through the group sharing and discussions and thinking about how can we make this learning visible with the teacher candidates. So whether you've done this for 4 years or you're doing it the first time this year, I want you to commit yourself to that your inquiry this year as a mentor, as a learner, is thinking about how can I center and make visible the principles of assessment and growing success for these teacher candidates. Now, if you're an experienced mentor, I invite you to consider also asking yourself, what are the possibilities for a collective critical inquiry stance in my group? And or how can we leverage learning through difference in the mixed cohort groupings? Okay, but I think those are things where you really need to have your feet well under you and know your groups before you carry on with question 2 and 3. But I think we can all commit ourselves to number 1 and really center that this year. Okay, So there will be some more information. Erin and I are going to keep talking to you because I want you to start lunch. But we do still have some important updates to share. So Erin, I'm going to pass the mic to you if you just want to explain like lunch and yeah. Yeah.
Okay, hi everyone. Sorry for the distraction with the delicious smelling lunch. So we will pause because your brains are over there. They're not up here. We all know that as teachers. So I do have a few updates. Do you want me to just do the updates now while I've got the mic and then eat first? Okay. 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 So food first. So we don't have to do any particular order, but maybe if you can start on this side because that's where the plates are. So now that we're eating, I'll take all the covers off. So there is utensils. And there's plates and napkins. Grab yourself a drink. So I'll just unlid everything and then help yourself and then come back to your seat and we'll keep going. People on Zoom, just hold out for 10 minutes.
Check. Okay, while you're eating, if you didn't mind like listening to me with one ear or looking up at the screen, I just wanted to mention that there's a few things that you can do to help yourself as a mentor to feel plugged in, because I found with new mentors, especially, the most common question I field is, am I doing this right? Which is the same for all new learning everywhere, right? So attending those check-in meetings, especially if you are a new mentor, I think is really important. I've scheduled some at some key times in the year. There's only one more mandatory meeting. It will be on Zoom and it will be in January to talk about ALPs. But I do have a couple of other check-in meetings that are optional. Developing peer-to-peer kind of mentoring relationships. I'm hopeful that today will help to facilitate that. Some mentors have just organically done that on their own. They've been like, oh, you know, we used to work together. We're going to just keep on keeping on. And they've met to share ideas for guest speakers, to share ideas for learning activities. And some of these groups, and not all mentors are, you know, in a peer group, but some of them have even met to co-plan and co-analyze. So I sort of see these as sort of a menu of options for you and sort of, you know, from like the least to the most amount of your time. So like I said, they're not mandatory. There's only one more mandatory meeting, but I really encourage you. You will feel more plugged in and connected and enjoy it more if you are connected to other mentors as well. So there are some ways to do that. And if you're looking for ideas or connections, feel free to speak to me about that as well. Okay, so save the dates. So Thursday, October 13th on Zoom after work, hopefully 4 to 5 is an optional check-in. This one, particularly if you're a new mentor in year one, is helpful because the teacher candidates are about to go out onto their first practicum. And while you're not practicum supervisors, there are some key links to practicum that I'm going to share in a little bit. I would say the one thing that has changed about the program this year in terms of the course outline is just making an even stronger connection to the practicum in terms of the expectations for practicum, which have been kind of redefined. So Joanne's here and I'm not going to ask you to like speak to it, but I'm just going to mention it. The one in January, as I said, we'll record it, but it is online. So you can either be there synchronously or watch it asynchronously. It's just about, you know, making sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to ALP development. The one in March is right before, again, for new mentors, it's right before the first external review that happens at the end of year one on March 7th. So if you have any kind of questions, last minute wonderings about that, I'll talk about that as well in January, but it'll be like an optional check-in for that. And then we hope that you can all make it back in person on the 23rd for a dinner, probably a pizza dinner and a debrief. Every year we've done a debrief and like I've shared on the Jamboard, there've been some really vital understandings coming out of that. Okay, updates from Erin. Erin, I'll hand you the mic.
Okay, so your group contact list. So we are still in the process of moving some students around. And as you're probably aware, that kind of thing can take right up until the last day of summer before classes start. So you will receive a list of your mentors with their contact information by September 1st. That's the goal that I'm hoping for. And then at that point, you're welcome to contact them, introduce yourself, do whatever you would like to do. Along with that, I will hopefully have rooms booked at that point. So when I send you your student list, you should also know the room that you will be mentoring in. If you chose a hybrid or virtual option, just ignore the room number and send your group a link or discuss with them which weeks are going to be in person and which weeks are going to be virtual. If you do choose virtual weeks, just maybe send me a list of which ones are virtual, and that way I can free up that room for somebody else. For so that's the same thing. Yeah, perfect. You should already know your time slots and what groups you're mentoring. It should be in an email from me. If it's not, or you're unsure about what your time slot is, just find me once Mary's done, and I can make sure that you have all that information. And then the last thing is the COVID policy update. So some of you may be familiar, some of you may not, but a couple of days ago, the Western made the decision to reintroduce masks for the upcoming academic year. But students will only be required to wear masks in academic settings. So a mentor group would consist as an academic setting because it's technically a section of a course. So you and your mentors should all be wearing masks if you're meeting in person, because it is an extended period of time in close quarters. And along with that, Western has also mandated that staff, faculty, and students at Western, that includes mentors, so there is a visitor policy. I have it if you would like to look at it, but it also requires a third booster. So if you have the 2 doses and your third booster, then you are good to go. If you do not have your third booster, Western would encourage you to do so. If you would like to talk to me about that, you're welcome to talk to me about that after. But I will be kind of coming around once Mary's done. All I need is an attestation from you that you are vaccinated and have your third booster. So I'll just be making a check mark if you have that. And if not, you and I can chat later about some kind of plan. I think that is all the updates that I have. Yeah, so that's it for me. And then if you have questions, I'll just be in the back eating my lunch when Mary's done, and you can come chat if you need anything.
Thank you. And just one word popped into my head about meeting time. So they're scheduled in 2-hour blocks, as are typically all classes in the Faculty of Ed, but they're really in reality an hour and 40 minutes max, because we have to give a 20-minute kind of break transition time. To some people literally have a class back to back with their mentor group. So you need to be mindful of that. Yes, and if you're meeting online, I know that during COVID, we said really try to limit it to an hour because of Zoom fatigue, because everything was online. You do have a little bit more. You have that hour and 40 minutes. I don't want you to feel like you need to go right to the bell at a minute 40. You know, again, use your professional judgment. The conversation's flowing. You'll find they get really engaged typically once they get to know each other and you. So there's a little bit of leeway, but do keep in mind that it's a very crowded schedule for them, incredibly crowded. Right, so if you got a 12 p.m. group, yeah, you know, that's a factor. And as you know, we have the option of meeting online, in person. So you can make that decision that works best for you and your group. Okay, so UWO emails. There's an associate Western ID process where you can get a Western ID, which gives you access to a UWO email account, all the Office 365 suite of projects, not projects, but you know what I mean. You use it to log into Western Zoom. So if you are doing an online meeting and you're using Zoom, we would like you to use Western Zoom. but we're offering other, you use the modality that you're most familiar with. So if you're working for a board and you use Teams and that's what you're comfortable with, then you can use Teams. If you're working for, a board and you're familiar with using Google Meet, then use what's comfortable for you and accessible for you. The Western ID process, you'll get an email and you can activate it and follow the steps. And then you can have that, but we will use all email contacts that you provide us to communicate with you, because I don't want to miss anyone. So if you're not checking your UW email regularly, please send that to Erin and she'll add it to the contact list so that we make sure we're reaching everyone. And important emails to watch for would be from myself, from Erin, and from Claire, who you all met today. Okay. All right. The OWL, because it's an official course, even though it really doesn't look like, sound like, or feel like one, it does have official OWL sites where the course outline and some materials are located in the resources folder if you're familiar with Western's learning management system. I'm going to have to close out. This was my last slide, so I'll close that out and I'm going to open up OWL and then draw your attention to that. Currently, I've added all of you into the year one site with, again, like whatever emails. So if you provided your UW email, then I've used that. Particularly if you work for Western, I've used that one. If you've given us other contact information, I've used that one. So you all got a notification, you should have, yesterday that you'd been added to the site. So you should be able to follow that link and access it. There are resources in there, including copies of the Ontario College of Teachers ethical standards and standards of the profession, some key practicum forms, some examples of ALPs, a copy, the PDF of Growing Success. And other than that, you don't actually have to go there. Because I'm going to make sure that you have copies of all of these things. I will email them to you directly. It's just that as students, the teacher candidates need to be, aware of this site and direct them to it, in terms of how they can access content as well. Some of you who have been instructors at Western have requested personal OWL sites that they can use to communicate with their group. And if you want that, just let me know and I can easily set that up for you. Or if you have one, just keep on using it. I'll need to add your new names. I can do that. Just let me know if you want me to update that for you. Okay. So like I said, enjoy your food. I'm going to switch out my slide and open up OWL in a minute. Because I do want to just point you to where the course outline is. And if you've got any questions about that, there are also some copies on the table that are kind of annotated copies for mentors. And I'll send those out to you by email as well. Do you have any questions at this point that you would like to share with me publicly? You can always ask me a question anytime privately. Yeah, we only printed a few copies because based on RSVPs, I was not anticipating as many. I'm so happy that more of you showed up. You can look at this one. Yeah. No, and I'm going to put it up on screen too. I wanted to have a few table copies as well. Okay, so if you need to trickle out, feel free to do that, especially if you're familiar with the course outline from previous years. It hasn't changed significantly from last year, but if you're a new mentor, you might want to tune into this part. I'm going to send this to you by email. I communicate try to do it in a timely fashion. So you need to know this now kind of thing. So closer to practicum, I'll send out more information that Joanne has for us about practicum and how it connects to the mentor program. Closer to the time of developing ALPs, I'll have more information about that. And Erin will have information about, scheduling external reviewers and all of that. The next email that you'll get from you later on this week, we'll have the official course outline once Kathy's approved it. But, we just chatted and she's like, it's not going to change. So Things to know. So this is the year one in draft. Year 2 obviously has only 6 sessions, and it's a little bit different, but not a whole lot because we're still going through the same processes. Both of them have this program context, which basically summarizes what I've said to you today in a nutshell. And I think it's really good to review that with your mentees. You don't have to review it on OWL because you're going to have your own PDF and you can create slides or whatever you want to do. I just want you to know that it's there and be able to access it. Okay, grab my controls. Okay, so then in terms of the weeks, September the 6th, you do not need to be here. It's a whole group orientation. It's going to be in the auditorium. It's going to be like a mass. And it's the time that I get to explain to the teacher candidates what the program's all about, what to expect, that sort of thing. It's just 30 minutes. Your official meeting. Now you're welcome to come and kind of hear it as well and be on the same page. You're welcome to even if you'd like, coordinate with your group if you're planning a meeting on site and just have a little meetup before or afterwards if they're available. But really your first official meeting with them is September the 20th. Okay. There are guiding questions for each week, which were developed through our inquiry process with the mentor groups over the past 3 years. So we're really happy with the kind of learning that it's generating. But as always, your professional judgment matters. So mentors can and do incorporate other things into their discussion based on their areas of expertise, based on the needs of the group. Sometimes they'll invite in a guest speaker and that sort of thing as well. So you have some flexibility there, but there are some suggested activities that we've found have worked well for each week. Jenny? Let me check with Claire about that because the first year it was no, it was just it's whatever. And then in the last 2 years it was online, which is certainly a viable way to do it. But in terms of our area and stuff, I would suspect the answer is no, but I will check. Okay, so there are the weeks and the suggested activities. And really, this is mostly for the teacher candidates just to know what's there and what's expected and to give you a bit of a guide for how to structure your group meetings. Okay, and there's the program policies at the end. So your typical course outline. The ALP is the only thing that they're kind of creating and presenting. As I stressed earlier, the professional practice record is something that they just start doing kind of organically and that you can help to guide and help them to learn from that and be more intentional about what they're documenting and why. Okay, so in OWL as well, and I'm going to, like I said, I'll send you out things as they become relevant, but in the resources folder, one of the things that's there is something that's new this year to the program, which is the teacher candidate and teacher mentor, so the associate teacher mentor agreement and expectations. So I was talking with Joanne as she was developing this, and one of the things that I really felt that was important, an important link to this course is observation. And Joanne already wanted to include more observation and really make it, rather than a suggestion, like a requirement, like your whatever stage that you're at in whatever practicum, you know, at least the first day is dedicated to observation. And there's going to be an observation logbook that they can record observations in. And again, nobody's going to be checking on it other than the mentor teacher to be like, we agree to have conversations about what you're observing, so that we're centering the idea that their planning comes based on observations and conversations and planning, and that's how it happens, and to kind of make that purposeful connection there. So this is something for year one mentors that you can go over with your group. And again, we're not asking you to be practicum consultants. We're just asking you to help them set them up for success by understanding professionally, what to expect, and, some of the unwritten rules, that sort of thing. But really draw their attention to this new agreement because it clearly outlines their expectations and their associate teacher expectations. Because if there's one thing that Joanne has learned, it's that problems arise when the expectations aren't clearly established. And if she's got an agreement to fall back on, like, look, you both signed off on this, then, she's got a place to go with them. Joanne, did you want to say anything else about that? Okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously, when they come back after that first practicum, they're just like the light bulbs have gone off and they're starting to make that student to teacher. Like they've basically crossed that first threshold at that point. And it's kind of like kindergarten after the holiday break. It's like, oh, okay, now we're learning. Now we're coming up and surfacing and thinking about it. So as part of this agreement, okay, sorry about that. Aaron, can you help me with that? Oh, okay. Come on, it's not letting me share. Thank you. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so part of the agreement that I would like you to draw their attention to is this kind of checklist of topics to discuss and agree upon, which includes observation and feedback and planning. Has that changed, Joanne? No. Yeah. Okay, so to me, this is the direct link to the mentoring program. How do observations and conversations feed into planning? That's assessment. And so that's where that most direct link is made. And also being really intentional about what kind of feedback will be given and how am I going to learn from it. So really helping them to join in as professionals, as colleagues, and have a professional conversation about, what feedback is going to be like and how I'm going to commit to learn from it. Okay. I think the other piece is lesson plans, even though, again, this is not something that you need to concern yourself with. It's just another requirement that we're really tuning up this year, right, Joanne? So it's in the agreement as well that they need to have an agreement about that. And the expectation of the teacher ed program is that they are submitting them in advance. Okay. All right. So that was the course outline and a key change in a nutshell. As I said earlier, I'm always available by email or in person if you happen to see me around to ask me questions. And particularly if you're a new mentor, I just want to encourage you to do reach out to me and ask questions. And I was excited to see that some of you are already making connections and like you're going to support one another as well. So that's beautiful. That's what we hoped would come out of this time together. So thank you again for coming. Please finish your lunch and mingle and leave. Yeah. And Aaron says, take seconds home. And just a shout out to the folks online. I appreciate you sticking with us and whatever bumps there were along the way as we navigated this hybrid space. And we'll stop the recording now. And then those that couldn't be here will view the recording of it. So thank you for your participation engagement today. Okay.